Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 84 of Behind the Camera, the podcast where we shine a light on the storytellers, the creatives, and the voices behind the camera. This week, my guest is Visibility and Embodiment Master Jenny C. Cohen. Jenny helps high-achieving entrepreneurs aged 40 plus silence their inner critic and lead life with bold, soul-led presence. If you'd like to stay connected and support the show, I am now on Patreon. For £3 a month, you'll get access to exclusive series, behind-the-scenes content, and much more. My link tree in the About section of the show also has links to the merch store, socials, and everything else. And finally, my upcoming book, Behind the Camera, The Journey So Far, is now available to pre-order on Kindle ahead of its release on both Kindle and paperback on the 5th of March. Now, here's the interview. Jenny, welcome to Behind the Camera podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. How are we doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, Andrew.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure. So you're a Visibility and Embodiment Master, which is a very, very interesting title. What can you tell us about what this is and how you got into this?
Well, when I first became a breast cancer survivor, I'll try to make my long story short. When I was first released by the medical doctors, Andrew, they were like, "You're healed. Go forth and conquer the world." And I was like, "Oh, you're kidding me, right?" Because I went from super healthy to now I have breast cancer, 18 months of treatment, and I don't feel safe in my body again. And you're telling me I can just go forth. And so I wrote a book about the modalities that I used, meaning anger management, because I was like, I am in my best health. Why would cancer show up then when there's no history of it?
Yeah.
Then there was guilt, because a lot of my fellow dancers who had cancer, breast cancer, ovarian cancer, different types of cancers, would not live. And I felt this guilt that why did I live when these other women who had bigger, at least at the time, in my perception, bigger soul purposes, were cut off from this lifetime and left, right? And then this general inability to feel safe again in my body. And I realized once the lockdown, the COVID lockdown, I like to call it the panini, Andrew, because everyone's not necessarily in agreement whether or not COVID's over. I have a family of immunocompromised individuals, so we have to take precautions.
Of course.
So during the panini lockdown, I wrote that book for breast cancer survivors, and then had this realization, oh, it's actually for everybody, because we all survived this global thing afterwards. We all have anger. We all have guilt. And we have quite a bit of, what is safe and what is not anymore. And then it further correlated into part of what it keeps us safe is the ability to be seen. Versus, oh no, I have to camouflage because that might keep me safe. But then it takes all the power out of your hands. Versus when, Superman, there's in body language, cue you on how you stand. Like Superman exposes his most vital parts because he's impervious to any injury. Even Wonder Woman stands in that slightly pelvis forward position because they're impervious. And I want that for everybody. This ability to feel like I'm so grounded. I know how to be safe no matter where I am, whether I'm speaking to a loved one or the board members or a stranger at the grocery store.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's really fascinating, especially, when you talk about being a breast cancer survivor, the fact that, when you get the all clear, like that's that essentially. It's just, okay, now you can kind of get back on with your life. There's it's almost as if there's kind of no sort of post-treatment care in terms of, managing your emotions. That seems to be everything that you've just taken into your own hands, because obviously you had the mindfulness to sort of acknowledge how you were feeling. And, I mean, I cannot even for a second imagine what that's like, especially because, I'm sure there's so many people who might not have had that kind of viewpoint as well. And would you say that being a survivor of cancer, that's kind of give you that kind of lease of life where you can think, well, I came out of this, and I think it should, I want to empower everybody else to kind of be in that position regardless of their situation.
Exactly, Andrew, because you said, oh, I couldn't imagine you being in that situation. Yes, I would never wish for you or anyone the experience of chemotherapy, because it kills you as it tries to heal you, right? It breaks down everything. The chemo doesn't go, oh, I'm just going to go after your cancer cells. It goes after your hair, your brain, all your organs, your peripheral nerve, all of that. And at the same time, you're still here in 2026, Andrew, and you're a survivor of this global event called the COVID pandemic. And those feelings that I help people with, we all have it, whether or not you're conscious of it. And I think that the biggest thing for everyone to understand is oftentimes where the current you that's listening to the podcast, the two of us talking to each other, we will not be aware we may be operating from a framework that kept us safe in the past that doesn't necessarily serve us now. So, for example, when I first came out of the treatment and felt really unsafe and didn't had any idea what to do on how to stay cancer free, right? It wasn't until I started to start to speak to my body in a way where I was asking my body yes, no questions through applied kinesiology to start having a clue as to what was safe and what wasn't. I had done a lot of research, and let me be clear. I had no breast cancer history in my family, nothing. I had been working out and being completely vegan 8 months before I found the lump. So I was at my pre-baby weight. Strong as FUCK, like super. I looked great. I felt great. And a month before I found the lump, my husband went in for emergency surgery back then. This is 2014 in May. He just had emergency surgery, open abdominal surgery, out of the blue. Now, all of a sudden, I'm managing a husband post-surgery, post-OR, and two young children, one who had my son had been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes 3 years before. So when a child has type 1, the parents have to check their blood sugar so they don't go into a coma or die in their sleep. So I'm managing that. And I couldn't rely on any in-laws of my parents or friends. No one stepped forward to help us, and I didn't ask for help, right? So my two kids and our two dogs were sleeping in the car with the engine running out of the parking lot for 4 nights in a row while I was managing my husband in his hospital bed. So during that period of time, I wasn't vegan, obviously. I was eating pizza once a day in the hospital cafeteria. Right. So I went from working out, fully clean eating in 1 week and then post-op care, and then managing my in-laws who went off their rocker during that period of time. It was very stressful for me. And my body couldn't take it. There's science that talks about how every day we're cycling through cancer cells. Our body will naturally get rid of the multiplying cells that have gone malignant and just get rid of it. I was so stressed, my body couldn't manage it. And then if you backtrack and take another step back and go, oh, right, because I hadn't slept for 3 years since my son's diagnosis. And then you backtrack again. Oh, well, that's because, you were stressed out from having fraternal twins. Oh, wait. But then there was the IVF to get the fraternal twins that they discovered you had pretty severe endometriosis. Oh, wait a minute. But then you went through like your husband's survival of testicular cancer that led to the IVF. Oh, you know what I mean? So you keep backtracking and you open up your framework. I have permission to speak on this because my daughter is of legal age now, and the twins of both my kids. If I bring up things about them that are personal but that are relevant to this conversation, they've given me permission to speak on it. So perfect. I didn't realize I had a childhood of neglect, and like my parents loved me. That's irrefutable. Their love language was like plates of fruit because they're Asian parents, right? I did not have enough touch. I never had words of affirmation growing up, right? And I was also a period of time, I was sent to my grandparents in very, very country part of Taiwan. So I went from electricity and plumbing when I was 4, shut it off to my grandparents who did not speak. I didn't even speak the dialect. and I was 4, and I had to keep my brother alive who was 2, because they would go to farm, and I was in charge of him.
Yeah.
So I went from plumbing to Shrek country, outhouse, no electricity, dirt floors. I never realized how much trauma that caused me. So that for the rest of my life, the only way I would deal with that, if like I first met you, Andrew, I'd be like cleaning your dishes in your kitchen. I would be doing unnecessary things of service and in attempts to keep myself safe.
Mm-hmm.
See what I mean? It's like I can
Yeah.
only speak for myself, and a lot of my clients go, "Oh yeah, I do this because of this, and I do this because of that." So part of what I do now is just to open up people's perspectives about patterns of behavior that you do now that may not necessarily serve you personally. They're just for mechanisms of safety from when you were a child.
Yeah, for sure. And that's really interesting because it's like, initially from when you got your diagnosis, like it sounds as though one of the first things you thought was, well, this is strange because there's no history in my family of this. But then when you break it down the way you just have and you look at all of these sorts of things, like it's almost as if it opens up a pathway of, well, that, either it's just been in the back of your mind for the longest time. You've never really kind of thought to go there, but that's incredibly fascinating. And then and with your clients, this is the sort of approach that you would take to sort of have them to kind of like open up and say maybe about like past things that they might not have realized have caused them trauma to this day almost.
Yes. And actually, the first few steps is I never even acknowledged I had any of those problems. Andrew, why? What? I'm old school. I'm Jane Fonda time. When the dinosaurs roamed the earth, like that time back then. Well, so I'm Gen X, the generation that was basically expected to raise ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So why would there was never any room for me to be like, oh, my parents were nothing but the best parents in the world. Right. And so a lot of us don't necessarily want to look at that past. We're trying to shift into a better future without realizing that in order to do that, first you have to feel safe in your body first. Forget about talking about traumas or whatever. Just the acknowledgement and the awareness. You may have some patterns you're trying to break out of and you want something else, but what keeps you from going there? And when I say, because my whole platform is about dancing to heal, or the fact that everybody has the birthright of being able to use dance as a way to reconnect with their bodies. That's your birthright. Every baby will move automatically to music.
Yeah.
No, if you think about it, every baby, we're all born with that. Why did we lose it? Right? And for me, this outside in approach, meaning your body into your mind approach, I have the best success with my clients who use dance to feel safe. And then we can start working on this awareness of what patterns don't serve them, what's blocking them from what they want in their lives, whether it's more money or more relationship closeness, like friends.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of girlfriends that say, well, I don't get along with women because we're so passive aggressive each other. I can't deal with it. And I'm like, okay, let's look at your patterns. Like what does that really mean?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's really interesting as well. So like you look at like dance and and we related that to healing. There's like that mind and body connection that's almost like has kind of sort of separated over time, and you aim to kind of like bring that back together. And obviously dance is not something you've done for the majority of your life. Am I correct in saying?
The irony is I've always loved dance as a child, and because my parents, when we first came to the States, it was never a priority, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for them, education was it. And it took me a couple of years before my mother allowed me one ballet class at 9. But then it was a waste of time for them. They did not let me continue. And I didn't really do dance again until it was an elective in high school.
Right.
And then from them, I still remember my first teacher. Her name was Ruth Lamine. And I got to do modern and ballet with her. And then after that was college. I took 1 or 2 semesters of choreography. I got to take class with Deborah Messing before she became famous actor here in the States. And then after that, it was just more of a passionate hobby on the side.
Okay.
I just realized that, what I love about it is that we want to walk away from the idea you have to be a professional dancer. You have to gig as a dancer, because that's a different thing. If you're hiring yourself out to dance, per se, it becomes entertainment. It's not necessarily about your self-healing, right? So there's different ways to do it. I'm referring to the dance where you get out of the shower and you're naked and you feel really clean and you happen to be playing the radio and you're wiggling around your bathroom. That type of dance.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right? I mean, some people do that, on OnlyFans. I'm not talking about that kind of dance. I'm talking about like your own dancing, right? For your own enjoyment and reconnecting. I want everyone to feel that freedom because there are many people who wouldn't even do that.
For sure, for sure. And it is interesting that you say that from birth or whenever you're a child, like there is this sort of thing in our brains that we're wired that way. Like I remember, I have like young nieces and nephews, and whenever they were like could barely, like they couldn't really walk, but they could just about stand, like supported, leaning on like a sofa or something, and getting sent videos of they're just sort of geared into watching the TV, but they're just dancing, but they're just bouncing up and down because there's like a beat, and it's the most innocent thing, and you're 100% right. It is something that just gets lost, I think, with like a lot of people, and like there seems to be this kind of disconnect, I think, as people get older, where like they kind of are people I think are more hyper focused on things they need to be doing externally to like themselves, like that they kind of almost forget that, do you know what, I'm gonna have fun while I'm doing this, while I'm doing my routine. I'm gonna have a bit of fun. I'm just gonna kind of move a little bit, and like I mean, and I like the fact that you separate it, so like it's not about professional entertainment, it's just about feeling good. It's just about kind of reconnecting with your own body and your mind, and like it's I think as well that there is a part of it where people sometimes people would just it's a case where a lot of people would do it but they would never admit to it. But why not? Where's the shame?
There is no shame. That's the beauty of it, right? It's different if it's different when someone wants to dance in public, though. So let me clarify, because I do fusion belly dance, which I fuse hip hop, contemporary, and different dance vocabularies of the form of belly dance and belly dance more America based than from the countries of like Egypt or Lebanon or Israel or Turkey or Iraq or Jordan. Okay, so not that traditional, because when I do those formats, I'm using their traditional music. So my fusion is I'm doing the movement vocabulary of those three dance formats into a story in my performances. When I'm doing that, I'm not focused on my healing. I'm focused on being a conduit for the message for the audience. So just differentiating, it's like my son is a ballet major from the University of Utah. Wow. And when he does his dance performance, like when he first started training, he was a late bloomer. He was kind of recruited off the street. And he took one ballet class and like, you're in the program. And I'm like, oh my God, that's so much money. Are you sure? And they're like, yes. Okay, great. So for him, he was very worried. He was like a late start. He was very concerned about the technique, about doing tours. Tours are when the male ballet dancer jumps up and does a 360-degree turn in the air and then lands. And he's like, I can't do those, Mom. I'm like, yes, you can. Just give yourself time, because it's a big thing to be able to do double and triple tours and jumps and turns. And yet my son can bring an entire room down in tears without having to do a single turn or jump, because he has movement quality and musicality and storytelling, right? And so I would have to give him pep talks like, so your goal in front of the audience is to change them, alchemize the energy, or to impress them with how many turns and jumps you can do. And he'd be like, oh no, it's to tell the story. I'm like, all right. So, right. Because dancers who can do incredible achievements, right? Some of them, it becomes a distance between, oh, here's what I can do, and you can just dream about it. Versus dancers, there are dancers who can do it and bring you into the experience, right? And the goal is, when you're dancing has just a joy to be alive format, you're either doing it by yourself for connection of mind and body, or you're doing it in community, because a community of dancers will actually change the energy in the space. I know this because I did that during my cancer treatment. As I was going through my 16 cycles of chemo and feeling myself getting weaker and weaker and not wanting to live more and more with every treatment, I would go to dance events, and even if I could not dance, just sitting in the space, I could feel the energy feeding me. Not like a vampire, okay? Because there are dancers who do that. Let's be really transparent with you, Andrew. I would feel an energy exchange. Even when I would perform for the audience during cancer treatment, I did a lot of awareness of, okay, as an occupational therapist, we did a lot of energy conservation. So if I traveled to an event, because I was in the middle of chemotherapy back then, 2014, I would have to do choices. If I'm going to dance that night, I will only take one class versus in the past, I would take all my classes and then change and then do the dance performance and then support all my friends, right? It would be, okay, if I woke up that morning though, and I was really tired, I'd have to conserve my energy all day so I could be performing and be 100% for my audience. Versus if it's another day where I'm not going to perform, just going to watch the show, I would do, or at least sit in the room with all the dancers. Even if I didn't physically dance, or I might get up and do like 1 8 count of a move I really liked, and then I sit back down. It never changed the energy that I would feel in the room. And that's a healing modality for many people that we're not even aware of. And I want that for the world to know. You can be on a group in Zoom and still feel that healing. It's a difference. The teacher has to be a little bit different for those type of settings. So I'm talking about if you're in a virtual class versus an in-person class, the teachers have to still set a very safe setting for you to learn and grow and heal. There is an energetic exchange, Anthony. Andrew. Sorry, I want to call you Anthony. Andrew.
That's okay. No, but I 100% know exactly. I know exactly what you mean, and there's because I feel this with live music a lot of the time, and I know like a lot of people have like their own different ways of kind of and what brings out how they kind of feel and like but I kind of feel like a lot of it comes into like immersion into something. So if I'm like, for example, watching like a band play live, it can be very dependent on like, what type of music it is. But to give you one example, like a few years ago, I remember seeing a group and they played Spanish guitar and it was just the two of them and they had like a backing band and it was, and you mentioned the whole notion of storytelling, with through dance and stuff like that. And like I was actually going to ask you to elaborate further on that, but you pretty much already answered it. But like it's one of them things where I was watching this group play. They're playing the Spanish guitar and everything, and all this music going on, and it's just like you're that immersed into it. The story just like tells itself, but there's just no way that you can sort of outwardly express what the story is. More just that you feel like you've been on this adventure and this journey with what is kind of unfolded in front of you, and like it is just such a revitalizing thing. Like I think it's one of the more sort of powerful things, and I think as well the subjectivity of it all is kind of a beautiful thing too, because sometimes people might like for take like a dance performance for example, some people might come out of that thinking, I was very very entertained by that. That was really really good. But then you have other people coming out being like, wow, my life is just no longer going to be the same. It's going to just be like, that was the most life affirming thing for some people. Like it is just fascinating how like the mind works, with these like little kind of, when I say trigger points, I mean in the positive way, not like what we'd be used to, but you know what I mean? Like in these little things that kind of evoke that kind of reaction we have as people.
Yes, yes. And going back to your I thank you for sharing this because I think that when a musician or a singer are so powerful enough that they can be part of a life change in the audience, I'm like, you've ascended to your life's purpose for that artist. Because that is part of, I feel, why we're here or still around after something like cancer or the panini. We still have to find our life's purpose to make a difference in the world, right? Whether it's to a wide audience or one single person, it doesn't really matter. We're meant to do something. And I always have to keep reminding myself, and oftentimes my clients, that we're a bunch of atoms bound together, and atoms vibrate to a frequency, and sound is a frequency. And energetically, even if you're sitting still, everything in your body is vibrating to that sound.
Oh, yeah.
And for dance movements, everyone should have the ability to express it in whatever they're feeling. That's the only thing. Like, I kind of want. I know you probably were tapping your feet or maybe like clapping your hands and maybe jiggling your leg a little bit to the music. My whole entire my dream would be to be able to do concerts where the audience gets to dance with a dancer, if you want to, versus just sitting there and having to hold yourself in and let the dancer express it for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because ecstatic dance places where the DJ comes in and makes the music, they're literally feeling the energy of the room and shifting it as the dancers need. I mean, there's a outline, the intro and then the building of the energy and then the resolution of it and then the outro, right? So
Yeah.
there is that. And the DJ's jobs are to alchemize the energy the dancers are doing.
Yeah. Incredible. Like it really is. And I love the sort of the philosophy that you have about like dance being something that kind of helps you feel safe in your own body, especially kind of after the traumas as well, like from like yourself with cancer surviving and like your family's history, with medical issues, and and as well the pandemic too, like like you mentioned the pandemic a couple of times, and it's quite an interesting comparison because especially kind of we can as much as there are still kind of the lingering issues, especially with autoimmune or compromised people and all that, but at the same time, like there is, and I noticed this maybe a couple of years ago, in a sense that when we kind of came out of the pandemic and everything was back to normal, as it were, what is normal, but there did feel like there was almost a sort of uncertainty in the air, like globally. Like I remember being like one of the first few times I was in a crowded place, and it had only been like it was really less than 2 years. But it just was like doing that pre 2020 seemed like a distant memory. It seemed like a lifetime ago, and the like even like now there's this kind of like I think there's this reflective thing I think with a lot of people where it's just like like 6 years ago this wouldn't have been a thing, and but 6.5 years ago this was just totally normal, and it's just that kind of little blip. It's for obviously people who kind of were in were of a certain age whenever it hit, it's a bit of a blip, but it still was a little bit weird navigating through it. But you have people who, it was a defining point of their life. You have like younger people, older people, um, autoimmunocompromised people, like that's sort of, and how can then sort of like people have like that? How can people sort of feel safe given that's happened and it's been such a defining point of their life?
Okay. Yeah, I'm really glad you asked me this question, Andrew. Our whole family, my husband and I have my husband had testicular cancer. I have breast cancer. My son has type 1.
Mm-hmm.
Of the 4 of us, 3 of us have gluten intolerance or celiac, and 3 of us have asthma. So we can't get the flu. Like, forget about COVID.
Mm.
We really can't afford to get anything because anytime any of us are, and one of us is vegan, like hardcore vegan. So we have very, very, very different dietary needs.
Yeah.
I mean, with my husband, who was just in the hospital in October through most of November, it was a hassle getting any food he could eat from the hospital cafeteria once he was allowed food. It was actually near impossible because they couldn't accommodate him in any way. They tried, but it was just kind of gross.
Yeah.
So we had to bring food from the house. And we do our own special form of staying safe. You get to hear all about it, Andrew. You ready? Because I think the reason why you're asking it is because there's someone in your audience who needs to hear it. We have 3 layers of protection. We don't always just mask because in the US with a lot of the political upheaval with ICE coming in and they're masked, it's not really safe for us to be masked for our safety because when people misconstrue that, there's a very anti-masking thought process, and it kind of detriments people who have autoimmune diseases or who are cancer patients who have to go out in the public. I mean, that's the real reason why we mask in the first place, right? I still remember masks I got when I was bald from chemotherapy that I would draw lips on so people could think I had a mouth because I I had all those ways to make it feel like I was a person.
Yeah, of course.
And when the pandemic hit, it wasn't that hard for me to find masks with lips on them, so to personalize people. For us, we do 3 layers of protection because we really can't afford to get sick. I got COVID once, and it was horrifying, and I didn't have to go to the hospital, but I had to be sequestered in the office for 3 weeks away from my family. And yeah, so I'm not doing that again. This
No,
was terrible.
of course not, no.
So we do 3 layers. The first layer is if you go to manukaguard.com, NAQU, MANU MANUQA, Manuka Guard, GUARD.com. They have a Manuka honey based nasal spray, and scientific research just came out about how nasal sprays keep you from getting COVID and other flu-like things because the germs enter your nasal passage first. So we do the Manuka Guard nasal spray, but we put on Q-tips and just kind of swab your nostrils.
Yeah.
The second layer is these things you can get on Amazon called air tamers. And what they do is they shoot an ion net around your head so that people's germs can't come into your personal space. And the third thing we do is we buy portable, they're called Pure Enrichment, PURE Enrichment. I should put these on something on my list, y'all, because I tell everybody about this. And then there's little baby HEPA filters.
Oh, yes.
And they just clear the space around you. So we always carry one of those on our bodies when we go into Target, or we have to go shop at the local Sprouts. We have these 3 layers of protection. If I'm on a plane, I mask and I don't care what anyone says because I'm stuck in a tin can in the air with people.
Yeah. Oh, God.
And I'm always surrounded by hackers, people who are coughing. And, they say it's allergies. I'm like, that's great. That's what they told me before I got COVID. So we're not doing this.
Yeah.
Right. So when I'm in a plane, my HEPA filters in the seat in front of me, I have my air tamer on, and I've done my nasal squirts, and then I have a mask on for travel. But because I've done live events where when I'm meeting strangers, you don't want your face mask on, so I have the air tamer, the nasal spray, and the air filters.
Yeah.
I just came back from Podfest in Florida, which I highly recommend. Very fun, and I got to speak and MC on their main stage on the first day. Yeah, and so when you're in those events, you need people to see your face.
Yeah, of course.
So I don't do those 3 layers, and then most of the time I come back and people start talking about how they got positive COVID, or they have what is it called? They call it the con crud. You come up with some virus, and I rarely come home sick. Like my COVID test is always negative when I get off the plane. I'm not, since we did these 3 layers with the mask on a plane, and then I just do all 3 of them always when I'm out with people. I always get questions and I tell them what it is. It just prevents me from bringing something home to my son who has type 1 diabetes.
Of course.
And it's very helpful. Like that, there are ways to mitigate so your body feels safe. And then you can dance with other people in a public setting. You know what I'm saying? There's ways. It's a bummer because I've had people say to me, Andrew, well, I don't have the money. I'm like, I understand. You can put them on payment plans. Some of them allow you to do payment plans over time so you can have access to it. And it's still worth it because our copays are so expensive in the States that for me to go in the hospital or to get the Paxlovid pill, it's just so much money out of pocket before we have everything covered. It's worth it to buy the damn filters for us.
For sure. Oh yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, and like it's excuse me, like it's fascinating. Obviously, the levels you kind of go through, but that must be like so just normal and second nature to you and your family at this point. Like it's which is it's certainly a good thing after so long that it's like you have your 3 layers of protection. That's kind of like when you leave the house, it's like, okay, what do I have? Phone, wallet, keys. Add on the extra 3. And like when it comes to second nature like that, so. If when somebody approaches you and they kind of like are the same sort of thing, like, okay, I don't feel safe in my body, and this could be for any kind of number of reasons, like, how do you sort of construe in terms of like dance being sort of a way that they can feel safe in their bodies?
Yes. Thank you for that question. Beginner steps, which I've actually I've done I've been doing this on my social media since January 1st, and I'll continue until 100 days, and I'll probably do another cycle through the year. I started doing these 100 days of movement with videoing of myself during my chemotherapy at a time when I could barely walk. So it's really funny. Well, funny, not then, but now. My videos from back then were, be a minute of me sitting there moving my leg and then I'd be exhausted, to now where I could do free movements. And the goal is you pick, so without worrying about being a performer, you're just learning to feel safe in your body again. The challenge requires you to pick 5 random songs, and then you just do the prompts that I give you. It asks you to look at yourself on video. And that's important because everyone has this distorted visual of themselves. And here in the States, we have these cartoons called the Care Bears, and the Care Bears, it's called the Care Bear stare. You look at a Care Bear and it looks back at you with like absolute love and acceptance. And you're learning to do that for yourself. That's a muscle that has to be activated. So when you're doing the 100 days of dance, you rotate through all 5 songs for one prompt, and then you start over from the first song and go to the second prompt. And you videotape yourself. And then before you video, you do a journal. How do I feel?
Okay.
And then you film yourself doing the dance to that prompt, that song. And then you immediately journal how you feel after. Then for a lot of my clients, they're like, this is a scary part. They have to watch yourself in the video. And the goal is you pick 3 things that you like what you did and 1 thing that you would do different. It's not, oh, I did this bad. It used to be, I'd be like, oh my God, what were you doing with your hand? And what was up with that face? And oh my God, your leg extension. No. 1 thing you would do different. And, the goal is not to look at it from a technique, more how you represented the music you were hearing. Okay. And then you just do this and do this and do this. And by about day 50, 60, you'll start to see a shift in how you see yourself and how you feel. Because we're actually doing multiple things in one exercise.
For sure.
We're changing how you perceive yourself. We're increasing your anxiety of being seen by a video camera, which is for a lot of people the most unforgiving thing in the world. We're redirecting your attention and what you look at. And we're literally having you give yourself positive thoughts every day. 3 positive thoughts. I like this. And then you start to note a change in how you feel after you move. That's the goal, that when you move, you feel better.
Yeah. And, it's interesting that you say about the attention portion of that, like it brings attention, because that was the first thing that I thought whenever you described it. That was the first thing I thought. It was like, well, if you do that for 100 days, then you are gonna change it up a bit. You're gonna pay attention to the things that you've done, the things like you mentioned, the things you keep. What would you do differently? But then you would probably think more and more into it in terms of like the songs that you does this fit the rhythm, does this, and you're kind of almost like teaching yourself to keep to a beat, even if whether you're naturally good or you're an absolute terrible dancer. I know everyone thinks they can dance, but wait until they put a video camera in front of you, whole different story, I can tell you that for sure. But it's, when you watch yourself back, I think it's like with a lot of different things, you watch yourself back doing it, and you don't look at it in terms of, oh, that was good or bad. You just think, well, okay, this particular part stands out, maybe kind of make that flow a little bit better. And because if it's genuinely not about ability and it's about healing, it's about that mind body connection we've talked about, it's just it's sort of being in touch with yourself. Then I kind of think like it reminds me of the whole terms, a very big cliche, like dance like nobody's watching, except in this case it's like, dance like as if everybody's watching, but you just don't care what they think.
That's the key. The key. And I will share that because I first started doing the 100 days of dance during my chemotherapy. And then for the surgery and the radiation, it shifted how I performed, how I held myself out in the world. That's when I started getting standing ovations after my performances. They just started happening after every performance during that time. And I was like, this is nuts. And I know now in retrospect, when I think back of it, is because I was so used to moving and looking and neutrally seeing what worked and didn't work for myself.
Yeah.
I became a very clear channel when I danced. And the goal is that, when we're out in the world, when we're interacting with anyone, your pet, your family, your coworkers, a guest or a host, you want to be a clear channel for what's supposed to come through us in our conversations and how you interact, right? I wasn't just not feeling my well before I got cancer. I didn't even realize that the well that I was drawing from within me, it was cracked and there was no bottom to it. How many of your listeners, this audience member, like how many of you have looked at your own well and go, oh my gosh, I got to repair the well before I try. I can't forget about holding anything. There's a big wind blowing through my well.
Yeah.
You've got to fortify the bottom, strengthen the foundation and the walls before you can fill, before you can give from your overflow. That's vital. Dance is one of the ways for you to start repairing yourself in this metaphorical sense, because the more in tune you are, mind and body, the stronger you know immediately if something's for you, if something's not for you, if someone's yanking your chain, or you need to really stand up for yourself about this particular moment and this thing.
Yeah, 100%. Like, and that's I think is something important, is being in touch with your own body and just sort of being in tune with yourself mentally. I think it is something that I think we're all guilty of it at times, where we just kind of get sort of so lost in the kind of busyness of life that you just kind of forget to look after yourself sometimes. But then within that, it becomes just so normal that, forgetting then becomes habit, which then leads to just all at least the worst things. And, but of course, like just sometimes, even if it's positive affirmation in the mirror, sometimes, like whether it's like, you don't have to like I know people, when I hear positive affirmations, it's not like list 5 things that you like about yourself, in the mirror. Like pick a look in the mirror and be like, oh, okay, like, my hair looks good today, sort of thing, etc., whatever, it may be. But
exactly. And just looking sharp today. Yes.
It's just those little kind of things that sort of, they just kind of like bring you back down. They're just like, okay, everything else around me doesn't seem as inflated as it once was. So yeah, it's nice to sort of just remind yourself of these things. And like, I think, and let's be honest. Most people listening, we all know that you dance to yourself in the shower, when you're hoovering the house, when you're cooking tea, when no one's in the house, when you're home alone, we know that you're dancing. Trust me, we all do it. It's fine. You can admit
it. Yes. Permission to dance when you get out of the shower naked and the good song is on. You're wiggling around in your bathrobe or towel. That's amazing. That's a feeling I want everyone to feel. And surprisingly, there are quite a number of people who won't even give themselves permission to do that, Andrew.
No, of course.
And I'm like, no, listen to your music. I mean, please don't dance in the shower. I've been known to. It's a little slippery in there with the soap. Don't do that. I do that. Don't do that. However, the freedom of feeling after the shower, because even the shower is something people do ritually, in rituals, to cleanse themselves energetically. That's when you're most free. Yeah. And if you use that time to move around a little bit, you've taken the first steps, right?
Of course.
Yeah. So that's what I would highly recommend. And like I'm doing a year-long study right now, so I have more of the science behind what I do, because there is a science. There is people who do dance therapy learn about the neuroscience of dance. I want that for the world to know more of, because if we knew more about it, we would be more open to it.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
And like for me, I resist breath work. And in the healing modalities, resistance means oftentimes you're not ready for it yet. So for some of the audience members and some of my clients, they're like, oh, I'm so caught up with dancing to music. And I go, okay, well, could you move to the sound of water? Could you move to the sound of birdsong? Birdsong is a universal sound for safety. Could you move to that? And I have quite a number of clients who are like, yeah, I could do that. They don't want music because then it comes up with this whole judgment. I need to have dance training, even freestyle dancing. There's a grading system about what that means, right?
Okay.
Right. So I want you to walk away from that. And I invite everyone, if you categorize it as dance music in your mind and you move to it, it's the same therapeutic benefit. So if you like falling raindrops and you want to move to that, do that and do the filming and then do the 3 things you like, one thing you would do different to portray that. This particular rotation of my 5 songs, the first one is literally just water being swished around in different sounds. And that's all we're dancing to. There's no other music in it. I think there's one weird tone thing that they put in the background, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Like, when it comes to even just sounds, well, like, I mean, you break it down, what we mentioned before, like, everything is vibrations, whether it's sound, whether it's music, and if you're hearing sounds, you can liken it to something that you've heard before. You can put a tune, a beat to the sounds just by kind of imagine it in your head, and then the rest is really just sort of down to your body at that point. And it's it's interesting. Maybe that's just the sort of musically minded sort of part of my brain that is kind of thinking that. But I would say, like, I kind of think if you're in tune with that sort of thing, then surely you can just sort of dance to absolutely anything, I would say.
Yes.
There was another thing actually I wanted to bring up. So you came up with the Spotlight Confidence formula. That's just another thing I wanted to talk about. So what can you tell us about, like, this and what this sort of entails and how it's used in your line of work?
Yes. The Spotlight Confidence formula is really around the acknowledgement that if we were to be really honest with ourselves, really honest, we're all feeling like we're the stars of our own movies.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, even when we're alone, most of the time there's awareness. And when we're in front of people, the spotlight might get brighter. We'll feel the heat of people's eyes on us. And the goal is to desensitize you to that. Because if we're truly honest with ourselves, we really want to be accepted as who we are without having to wear masks for most of our lives. Yeah. The Spotlight Confidence formula is that's outside an approach where you are primarily starting to understand what do you hide behind when you think you're being perceived. So the dance challenge is one way to get around that. Using 5 senses to get yourself really present is another way around that. There are other modalities that we do in the program regarding energy work and timeline healing, because sometimes no matter what you do, you still go back to old loops. Mm-hmm. And it's really important to empower people. Some of the quantum science now is coming back into how certain actions now can actually influence things in the past. They're able to document that now in scientific research and quantum physics. Wow. Yeah. And I'm like, this is amazing. I can just push people to those studies now and be like, hey, you can actually heal your past. And it's like this understanding. When I first graduated from my master's degree in occupational therapy, there was this acknowledgement we really know less than 5% of what the brain does. Mm-hmm. And this kind of, well, the conscious you is 5% of your brain, and the rest of your subconscious, which is buried in your brain, is 95%. Now they're getting like, we have 8% of the conscious brain mapped out, and the rest of the 92%, we're not quite sure how it really works. And more research is being able to explain to us even something like interoception, which is the awareness internally in your body. Yeah. So we can learn to be very perceptive of that. It used to be 5 senses: smell, taste, hearing, feeling, and vision. Now there's interoception and proprioception, which in occupational therapy or in the rehab services, it's just the person's awareness of where their arms are in space. Okay. Right? Yeah. That is logged in your brain in different places. So when you're doing dance, you're hitting all of these things at the same time. And the goal is for you to be clear and very centered, because those gut instincts sometimes that we pay attention to that really help us is when you're really maximally connected.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Wow.
Right?
Yeah. That's really fascinating. Like, and what I like about that is it kind of all relates back to like this mind-body connection and just sort of being mindful of yourself in a particular moment, and even mindful of your past and your future, but just really kind of sticking to the present and just sort of focusing on sort of how you are, what your situation is, and how you can kind of ultimately better that, and
Exactly.
heal. It's incredible.
Before I started this journey, Andrew, I hated when people would say, well, you're here because you chose to be. I would be like, can I punch you in the face? What do you mean? And sadly, it's true. It's really true, because I used to suffer so much, Andrew. A lot of my clients suffer because we're dually trapped in the past, where we were so powerless, and worrying about the future. We're just stuck between two places, when really, in reality, you're here in the now. We have so much power. It's this perception of powerlessness that traps people in our pain. And there really is a way out. And that's the goal, is to give people more freedom ultimately.
Of course. And that's absolutely it is fascinating and fantastic stuff. But Jenny, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on Behind the Camera. Thank you so much for your time. It's been amazing chatting to you. Just before we wrap up, where can the listeners find you and your work?
Oh, thank you for this opportunity to share this with your
My
audience,
pleasure.
Andrew. We do monthly workshops under the domain of Move to Bloom, MOVETOBLOOM.com. And it's subsidized by a nonprofit. So the tickets are free. And even when you upgrade to VIP, it's also for free. I'm sorry, not free. It's subsidized cost. And then you get access to recordings and extra bonuses. And you can always find me on any social media under Jenny C. Cohen, where I'll chat. Let me know that you came from Andrew's podcast, please, under the Behind the Camera podcast. And I can answer any questions. I also have a podcast called Dance to Heal. Life is a Dance. And you're welcome to check in on those. We'll probably have to have Andrew on there soon.
I would love it. Absolutely love it. Yeah. Yeah, well, make sure, those listening, make sure you do check out Jenny and her work. And once again, Jenny, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
And there you have it. That brings us to the end of episode 84 of Behind the Camera. Massive thank you to Jenny C. Cohen for being this week's guest. An insightful conversation into mindfulness and the mind-body connection we feel through dance in a healing perspective. Thank you again to all new and existing patrons for supporting the podcast. If you too would like to stay connected and support, check out my link tree in the About section, where you'll find the Patreon, merch store, socials, and much more. Even rating the show and sharing with a friend really goes a long way. Until next time, take care, stay creative, and I'll see you soon. But until then, peace.